Welcome to Town Talk, the official podcast of the town of Stephenville, where community conversations happen. I'm Marilee Joy Castillo, Communications Manager at the town. This podcast takes place in the chamber of Town Hall, where we share updates, ideas, and information about what's happening in our community. And today we're going to be speaking with one of the candidates in the upcoming municipal election. So please join me in welcoming Pamela Bennett McLeod. Welcome, Pam.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, first of all?
I am a retired member of the provincial college system where I was an instructor, a program developer, and a manager. I have been involved in many leadership roles, I guess, over the course of my lifetime, both in community, provincially, and internationally. And I am a mom, a wife, and a grandmother.
Wow, congratulations on all of those things. Very well informed. What motivated you to run for council for the municipal election?
I think the biggest reason that I decided to run for council is that I wanted to bring a female Indigenous voice to the council table. We are seeing a revival in all things Indigenous in our community and in our province and even across the country. So I think that being an Indigenous woman, I have a responsibility to the next 7 generations to make sure the interests of Mother Earth and the interests of our people, our culture, our traditions, our language, and our history are here and represented. And more so than that, I also want to, use my education and experience of being a leader for over 40 years to come to the table and represent the people of our community.
That's great. And what do you think right now, if you had to think about all of the different things in Stephenville, what do you think the top issue is right now?
I think the top issue would have to be that people are so disillusioned with things. I try to always put things in a positive light, but I think that people feel that their voices aren't heard, that they're not represented around the table, and that there's little accountability and little transparency, and maybe some things that are happening that they don't understand or they don't know how they can, become better informed and more involved. So for me, that would be the biggest issue right now. And if I'm elected, I would try to make inroads in making sure that people are aware, first of all, that they have a voice and that they can participate. And second, that it's my responsibility to share information across the town of what's happening and, decisions that are going to be made that can be made public, that sort of thing.
And what do you think in your qualities and your experiences that you've had and that you have, what do you think that you would, out of all those qualities and experience, what do you think would make you an effective counselor?
I believe that I have learned over the course of my career and personal life and community engagement and volunteerism life that all people have talents and gifts and skills. And if you approach people as people and you look at them and you allow them to see their potential, what they can give, how they can give, then I think you have a much more connected community. It's not about a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. It's a we are equal approach. And I've done that in my career and I've lived that in my life experience. So I believe that's the way to go in terms of being a connected counselor to a connected community and people feeling like they are involved in their own community instead of dictated to.
That's right. And I know you mentioned about being the voice for the citizens. So what do you think, how would you make sure that you bring the voices of the residents and be heard at the council table?
I would look at that in a multi-pronged approach. I would have, of course, my email and my socials that are available to people to reach out to me. I would be available at times for people to come to the council chamber here to have separate maybe meet and greets, question and answer periods. People are always going to be able to reach out to me by telephone. And I'm not going to be the be all and end all. I can't fix everything. but I can certainly bring issues forward and make sure that they know that I am there for them. I am only, if elected, there to serve them in whatever way that they think is needed to bring ideas forward, but also to invite them. Like when council meets, people are invited to attend the public meeting or to join on through the live stream,
Yep.
but people need to be aware of that. So I guess part of my role would be to share that these things are available.
Excellent. What do you think your approach would be to encourage small business growth here in our town?
So I think that we need to welcome small businesses that are new to our town, and we need to encourage small businesses that are already here, and maybe even encourage newer small businesses to start. And I think we have to incentivize that by maybe making education of how people can start small businesses, what needs to be done. There are resources available through that here in our town, and we need to connect people to those resources. It's not like inventing something brand new. So education is very important. What does it entail? Where can you get funds? Who can help you? Who can mentor you, etc.? And also to provide some kind of incentive for small business. I'm not sure what that would be exactly, if it's a tax break, if it's, some kind of monetary honorarium that can be given. But I would look at two-pronged education. How can you set up? How can you start a small business? How can you improve your small business within our town? How do we support that?
Mhm.
And then also, how do we provide some kind of financial assistance or financial relief for small business when they're starting up, because it's very expensive.
Very expensive and very important.
Very important. Our town needs to grow.
That's right. Do you see any opportunities like for more regional collaboration with surrounding communities throughout Bay St. George?
So I am involved with a group that's called the Newfoundland Alliance of Rural Mi'kmaq Nations. I'm one of the co-coordinators of that, and that involves 6 communities around Bay St. George and a little bit beyond. And it's really important because within that group, I work with the chiefs to share information and economic development ideas, information for their band members, that kind of thing. And when you have such collaboration as that, bigger things can get done. The chiefs are doing a marine biomass project with MUN, and it's because of the numbers of the communities grouped together. I think it's vital that we look at not only developing our town, that's important, and I mean our number one priority, but there are some projects that reach beyond our town. So we need to look at Kippens and St. George's and Stephenville Crossing and those kind of Port, that kind of thing. And we need to look at what are some ways we can also do projects that involve all of us, because we're a big hub. Stephenville is a hub for our surrounding area. So how can we be responsible stewards for not only ourselves, but for the people that come here to do their shopping, for their medical appointments, for, their vehicle servicing, for everything that they come here to do. So how can we better serve that bigger region?
That's right. And how do you think the town should prioritize like community, economic development, infrastructure? What's your thoughts on the town prioritizing and how it should be done?
Well, of course, any town council needs to look at ultimate budgets and what money is available and what needs to be spent. But when push comes to shove, roads and water and sewer and sidewalks and playgrounds and green spaces are all very important, because if you have a town, you want your citizens to be happy, and you also want other people, when they're coming here to scope out whether a business should come to town or whether they personally should move to the town, you want to have an inviting town. One of the things that I think would be a good idea is when a new development, subdevelopment gets approved by council to go ahead and put houses in, there needs to be designated green spaces and designated playgrounds in areas, because I noticed that hasn't necessarily been happening. But I think it would be a really nice thing that if a developer is going to put 20 housing lots in an area, that they should put a designated green space, little park, and a little playground for the people who live in that area. And if we continue to do that on a go-forward basis, we're creating a more beautiful town and a more inviting town. And I love the fact that, we've done great work on Main Street and we have sidewalks going up Georgia Drive and that kind of thing. And that's wonderful, right? All those things help. Potholes. Everybody has issues with potholes, and that needs to be our priority as well. But we need to look at what needs to be fixed, and then also what are our new goals and new opportunities.
Excellent. One of the things that you kind of talked about was housing, and that was kind of going to bring me into the next thought that I had. Like, do you think Stephenville needs more housing options? I know housing seems to be a problem right across the province, right across the country.
Yeah.
Everywhere you're hearing more and more about housing needs and housing, problems that are arising and not enough housing. So do you think Stephenville needs more housing? And if so, what do you think council should do to address that?
So Stephenville has a major issue with housing. It, like other communities across the province and nationally and even internationally, housing is very expensive. For one, because it's at a premium and there's not enough. So that drives the cost up. We are facing an economic pinch, so people are finding it very hard. They have to pay to live somewhere, and unfortunately, they don't have enough money. So therefore, something else is giving, be that their heat and lights or their food budget or not being able to pay their bills. Part of the work that I do in community is assisting people with obstacles in their lives and in their employment. And it is very scary and sad, the choices that people are having to make and how far in the hole they're getting because of the housing crunch. We need to have affordable housing. And I believe that the way that we need to look at that is, again, incentivizing companies that will build affordable housing and also provide a lower cost of rental for housing, or even maybe, the town could build some of their own houses and have a more appropriate rent for that, or even some of the communities that I work with for my Indigenous bands, they have, options of rent to own houses that they've either bought and fixed up or built from the ground up, and plans in the works for building duplexes and triplexes and row housing and little apartment buildings and that kind of thing. The government came out with the plan that if you convert your basement to an apartment, as long as you pay lower than market rate, they'll fund up to, I think, 50%. So maybe we as a town need to encourage projects and programs like that as well. There's still issues, of course, because some people can't come up with the 100% in the first place to then wait for a 50%
return
rebate.
From them. Yeah, rebate.
But we need to look at housing as a crisis, because really it is. And there's a lot of homeless people. And people may not realize that, but there are homeless people in Stephenville. There's a lot of couch surfers. There's a lot of people who struggle in the summertime, but really struggle in the wintertime because they have no place that they're living. There's people living in the woods. There's people living under bridges. And I only know that because I work as a volunteer to ensure that they have meals and groceries and sleeping bags.
Okay.
So we need to look at that as a town. It's very important.
For sure. How would you, as a counselor, ensure transparency in the town?
Well, I started being a leader when I was 14, and I was elected to a youth group as the president. And then I went on in the next year to be elected as the provincial vice president. And then I went on to be elected as the international president of that organization. And I learned at a very young age that transparency is very important, because you need to let people know that what you're doing is what you said you're going to do. And if what you intended to do is not what happens, you need to give them the reasons why. No one is a miracle worker. No one can accomplish every plan that is put to action. But as long as people know that things are moving forward, then they're more likely to support you and the council that you are a member of in their endeavors. Keeping people in the dark really breeds strife and discontent because people then come to their own conclusions and make judgments based on what they think they know. And there's a lot of keyboard warriors, as we know, out there who spread malicious rumors and lies. So I believe that transparency of the people for the people, giving the information so that they can understand what's happening. Understanding clears up a lot of problems. So not talking about sharing confidential issues that the council may be discussing, but I'm talking about sharing information that the town should know, ought to know about the happenings of, our developments happening, with the airport. I know that's a touchy subject, but, what's the next step for the airport, or where is a building going to be built and why, or is a subdivision getting granted access and why, if that was on land that was zoned for a different purpose. So people want to know the ins and outs of stuff in a simple way, of course. And I've also prided myself on I'm only as good as my name. So I try to be an honorable, honest, kind person. I treat people the way I would want someone that I love to be treated. I've done that throughout my years in the educational system and as a volunteer. That's what I will continue to do.
And that kind of brings me to my last question. And I know that you've touched on a lot of it just now in your summary, but if you could sum up why people should vote for you, what would you say?
I would say that people should vote for me because I bring experience, I bring integrity, I bring honesty, transparency, and accountability. And that accountability, being responsible for your actions is something that I hold dearly. I believe that I have a good name in the community. I've done lots of good works, volunteered, my whole life, from the time I was a child to the time my kids were growing up here in the area. I've been involved with a lot of groups, a lot of organizations. People know me, and people know that I am who I am. I don't have any, qualms about helping others. I'm a positive person. I want to do good, and I would do good work here on the council if I'm elected to serve.
Thank you very much, Pam, for coming in today and taking the time to answer some questions that I know are going to help residents make informed decisions. And we want to wish you the best of luck in the upcoming municipal election.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure to be here, and I am really glad to have been given the opportunity.
Thank you. So that concludes this episode of Town Talk. As I mentioned, thank you very much to Pamela Bennett McLeod, one of the candidates running for council in the upcoming municipal election, for joining us here in Chamber today.